MLB Network continues their Top 10 Right Now series looking at catchers. So I'm going to bring you my Top 10 list for the 2025 campaign. Let's get into it. Looking at the number 10 catcher on my list, it is Austin Wells of the New York Yankees. I think that when you look at what Wells was able to do for the Yankees in 2024 as a rookie, he finished in third place in the Rookie of the Year standings. But beyond that, this was a guy who, for a good portion of the season, was protecting Aaron Judge in that cleanup spot. While I don't think that that's where he's going to play and bat in the order for the Yankees in 2025, I think that the experience that he got going through the extended postseason run into the World Series will allow Austin Wells to really put himself in a position to be successful in 2025. I think that there's very little question that the work that this player has done in silencing the doubters on his catching ability to match his bat is really going to be a standout performance in 2025. So I look for big things out of the Yankee left-handed hitting catcher in the 2025 campaign. As we look at the number 9 player on my list, it is Logan Ohappy of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I think that when you look at what Ohappy can be, this is a young guy who is a tremendously talented player in my opinion. I think that there's going to be a big breakout season for Logan in 2025, and I think that he's going to have a tremendous impact on the Angels being competitive in this upcoming season. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go along with the Angels and have been over the past half decade plus, and even beyond that, to be honest. But when you look at the team that they're starting to build, when you build around a guy like a Logan Ohappy in the middle of that order, I think this is going to be a guy for the long term in Major League Baseball. Is going to be one of the more successful catchers. This is a player that works tremendously hard by all accounts and is going to be better in 2025. A healthy season out of Logan Ohappy, to me, is going to help the Angels remain competitive in a very wide open division in the American League West. As we get into the number 8 catcher on my list, it is Gabriel Moreno of the Arizona Diamondbacks. When you look at what this player can be, I think that this is going to be a breakout season for Moreno. This is a player who has the ability to continue progressing on both sides of the baseball and, in my opinion, in doing so, really putting himself at the forefront of the catching position. I think over the next coming couple of seasons, he is going to skyrocket to the top of this list. That's how much talent I believe in this player. When you look at what Moreno is capable of doing on the offensive side of the ball, they think there's still more room to grow, even as good as he's been. Likewise, on the defensive end of the baseball, this is a guy who can continue to grow and become even better. The Arizona Diamondbacks have brought in a top-level ace in Corbin Burnes, and I think that that is going to help his maturity behind the plate as well. Having a veteran guy that you can continue to learn from on the opposite side of the mound as a battery mate is going to be something that I think has tremendous impact on the young catcher. Going forward for the Arizona Diamondbacks, they're looking to get back to the World Series, and this was a player who helped them do that just a couple of seasons ago. So getting back to that and having a player of this caliber, he's only going to rise in stock. As we get into the number 7 player on my list, it is a player who dealt with a ton of injuries in 2024, much like many of his teammates, but it is Shawn Murphy of the Atlanta Braves. When you look at what this player had been for the past several seasons getting into the Atlanta Braves organization, this was a player who was extremely consistent and a reliable source for the Athletics of both offensive and defense capabilities. When he went over to Atlanta, injuries befell him and it kind of hindered what he was capable of doing. But a healthy Shawn Murphy in 2025 can truly help Atlanta bounce back to being one of the best teams in Major League Baseball in 2025. I think on both sides of the ball, Shawn Murphy is really going to bounce back and show that he is healthy and capable of producing the way we saw him do in a much more hitter Averse Park out in the Oakland Coliseum. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of eyes on the Braves in 2025 based on falling out of the divisional race early on because of all the injuries, most of which had to deal with the offensive side of the baseball. But when you look at what Shawn Murphy can be for the Braves, this is a guy who can handle the pitching staff, and they love throwing to him. And on top of it all, a guy who is going to be capable of providing some thump with that bat into the middle and lower half of that Braves lineup. That's how tremendously talented the lineup is, and how much more it allows this player in Shawn Murphy to really expand his ability and his horizons in 2025. As we get into the number 6 player on my list, it is JT Realmuto of the Philadelphia Phillies. JT has kind of regressed back to the pack. This was without question for a long time the number 1 catcher in the game for me. Now, as he continues to get older, we start to see some diminishing returns on the offensive side of the baseball, but defensively, this is still one of the best catchers in baseball. I think getting into the 2025 season, JT is going to find himself rebounding on both sides of the ball and continuing to progress and be one of the best catchers in all of baseball. It would not surprise me to see JT and his stock rise up further on this list going into the 2026 season, because that is how talented this player is. Anything he sets his mind to, he is capable of doing. And I think that a bounce back campaign in 2025 is not just on the horizon for JT Realmuto, but a foregone conclusion. For now, JT lands at number 6 on my list, but it could very easily bounce up higher. As we get into the number 5 player, it is Salvador Perez of the Kansas City Royals. When you look at what Sal has been capable of doing for a decade in Major League Baseball, this has been one of the most consistent players in all of the game. Last season was an absolutely tremendous offensive performance, and he helped the Royals get back to the postseason and have one of the biggest turnarounds from year to year in 23 into the 2024 season that we've ever seen in Major League Baseball, and Sal was a very big part of that. Going into 2025, his veteran leadership capabilities and what he is able to do with that pitching staff as a leader and being able to do for the rest of the players in that clubhouse is a tremendous talent. Going into this new up-and-coming season, I think that Sal Perez is really going to find himself once again revisiting the fountain of youth and having a tremendous offensive performance. There's no doubt about it. This is a guy who you can build your franchise around, and that's exactly what the Royals had done over the past decade. Going into 2025, Sal's going to be a presence in the middle of that Royals order that is looking to claim that American League Central division, and a division that, in my opinion, is wide open. And Sal and his veteran capabilities and leadership can help this Royals team claim that division once again. As we get into the number 4 catcher in the game, in my opinion, it is the Los Angeles Dodgers' Will Smith. When you look at what this guy does, there's really no holes in his game. Tremendous on both sides of the baseball. When you look at what Smith is capable of doing in the middle of that Dodgers order, this is the guy that almost slides under the radar, as crazy as it may seem, being one of the best players and one of the best catchers in the game. His pitchers love throwing the baseball to him, and what he is able to do for them offensively as well is a big-time asset. When you look at what Will Smith can be for the Dodgers in 2025, this is going to be a guy who, again, slides under the radar. When you look at the length of that Dodgers lineup, this is a guy who can hit in the middle to lower half of the order. Or, because of his tremendous capabilities as a hitter, you can have him in the top half of the lineup. When you have a catcher who you can place anywhere across your lineup, it is something that is a valuable asset. And that's exactly what the Dodgers have in Will Smith. No doubt about it. When it comes to these top 4 catchers on my list, they are interchangeable. Will Smith could easily be number 1 on the list, but for now, he comes in at number 4. As we get into the number 3 catcher on my list, it is William Contreras of the Milwaukee Brewers. This, to me, is one of the most underrated talents in baseball. I think that when you look at what he is capable of doing on both the offensive and defensive sides of the baseball, there's no one else like him. And when you think about what he is capable of doing for that Milwaukee Brewers pitching staff that we know has been so tremendous over the past several years, they've been throwing the baseball to the younger Contreras brother. This is a guy who continues to develop and continues to mature offensively in his game as well as on the defensive side of the baseball. And there's no doubt this is a guy who could absolutely skyrocket to the top of this list over the next coming season, let alone over the next coming couple of seasons. When you think about what Contreras has been able to do, this has been one of the more impactful bats for that Brewers lineup that sometimes can be a little bit starved of offensive capabilities. But this is one of those guys that they rely on night in and night out on both sides of the baseball. William Contreras comes in at number 3 on my list. As we get into the number 2 player, it is the man known as the Big Dumper, Cal Raleigh of the Seattle Mariners. When you look at what Raleigh is capable of doing for this Mariners team, he does it on both sides of the ball. Capable of hitting 30 home runs, playing solid defense, Gold Glove caliber defense behind the plate, giving the Mariners a consistent and reliable player night in and night out. The strains and wear and tear of the catching position has not diminished what he is capable of offensively. Yes, you're going to want to mix him and match him when it comes to the DH spot, kind of get him off his legs a little bit. But what he is capable of doing as an everyday catcher for a Mariner staff that is without question one of the top pitching staffs in all of baseball, without a doubt, this is a player that is consistently behind the plate for each and every one of those starters. What he does on the receiving end of the baseball is what allows that pitching staff to feel so comfortable and to feel so good with what they are doing night in and night out, with the pitches that he's calling, with the game that he's calling behind the plate. And then when he goes onto the opposite side of the ball and he stands at the plate and hits that 3-run home run, hits that grand slam, they feel even more confidence in what their catcher does on a nightly basis. Cal Raleigh, to me, is one of the more underrated players in our game simply because people don't stay up to watch the late West Coast games. But when you watch what he does on a nightly basis, not even just the highlights, because he provides a ton of those, but when you watch him night in and night out and what he does for this Mariners team on both sides of the baseball, there's no doubt about it. Cal Raleigh is one of the best catchers in the game. Now that leaves us to the number 1 catcher in the game, and for me it's Adley Rutschman. No doubt about it, 2024 was a down year for the Orioles backstop, but I think that we see a bounce back in a big way. Both offensively and defensively, to me, this is one of the more consistent and reliable guys, and I think obviously coming in just a couple of seasons into the league, that sophomore slump, as you would say, really did hit Adley Rutschman hard. But when you know what this player is capable of, we saw what he was able to do in his rookie season, and I think he gets back and much closer to those numbers in 2025. Adley is a guy who absolutely receives the ball tremendously well. He is able to hit in the middle of the order, a switch hitter who provides a ton of power and consistency for that Orioles team. Going into year number 3 for this player, this is a guy who is now going to be one of the veteran leaders on this very young ball club. He has the ability to command a presence behind the plate as well as at the plate. Being a switch hitter allows him to be able to maximize his advantage on both sides of the baseball. Without a doubt, Adley Rutschman to me is going to be a guy that bounces back into the top end of the MVP caliber conversation. Yes, that may seem crazy to say for a player going into his 3rd season, but when you look at what he does on both sides of the baseball for an Orioles team that is battling and fighting in an extremely tough division in the American League East, Adley is one of the most reliable and important pieces, vital pieces to the success of the Baltimore Orioles. And I think going into the 2025 campaign, he re-solidifies himself as an MVP level player. But I want to hear from you, baseball fans. Let me know your thoughts, your feelings on my list down in the comment section below. Let me know who you select as your top 10 catchers in the game right now. Make sure you follow us on our social media outlets, on X at Banter_baseball. Everywhere else you can find us at Baseball Banter Broadcast. So I want to thank you. Keep it locked in all season and all season long as we continue to bring you more coverage here on the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Peace.